Well, it doesn't get a whole lot more festive than this. New York City, New York, site of UFC 268, live from Madison Square Garden this weekend. With that, welcome in to our UFC 268 betting preview presented by DraftKings. I'm John Anik, and I am privileged to be joined today by esteemed mixed martial arts writer, reporter, Chuck Mendenhall, and of course, the former two-division champion, Daniel Cormier is here. Pretty nice studio we got today,
Oh, my goodness. Listen, this is about as good as it gets, Chuck.
This is beautiful, baby. Look at this.
This
all
is
green.
Good. It's good. It's like 55 degrees in here. You see it? I like the temperature.
Yes.
All right, a lot to get into today. Coming up shortly, you will hear from the esteemed DraftKings Race and Sportsbook Director Johnny Avello. But let us get you primed for this main event. It is a rematch for the UFC's Undisputed Welterweight Championship. Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. Right now, Kamaru Usman minus 320. The comeback on Colby Covington is plus 250. And I know, Daniel, when we sat down in our pre-show meeting, you're a little bit surprised seeing that plus 250. That's a big number.
It's a big number, honestly, because when you watched the first fight, you saw how competitive that first fight was. It was 2-2 going into round number 5, but I think it speaks to the improvements that the world has seen from Kamaru Usman in the time away, and also not being able to see Colby Covington as often. We've only seen him one more time since that fight,
right?
And it looked very similar to what we saw from Colby Covington prior. It's not like he had a new wrinkle to his game. He fought Tyron Woodley in the same way. You would expect him to win the fight, but you don't know what that would do in regards to him beating Usman, because we didn't see anything different.
Right. So, Chuck, the first meeting at UFC 245 was essentially 2-2, according to most scorecards, going into that 5th round before Kamaru Usman ultimately finished Colby Covington. What do you think could be different in the rematch?
Well, I know one thing. When you have a guy like Colby Covington who does his pace, and really his fighting style is just onslaught. It's just overwhelming the guys, putting a lot of volume. I think he threw up like 395 strikes. You expect that kind of fight. But I'm just looking for him to maybe mix it up a little and get some disruption. There weren't a lot of there were no takedown attempts in that first fight, which is kind of nuts. When you look at some of what Colby has been able to do leading up to that fight, I think he took down Robbie Lawler 10 times, RDA like 7. He was taking these guys down. He was mixing it up. You got to see some of that, even if it's not effective, if it just disrupts some of what was going on. Because on the feet, as that fight went down, especially in the 3rd round, I just felt like Usman, he just got the rhythm. He just started solving them through that 3rd round and 4th round.
You watch Colby Covington, John, and one of the biggest things that he does is his cardio is one of his greatest weapons. He uses it as a weapon, knowing that when he tires, his opponent's going to be fatigued much sooner than he will. But when you can incorporate the wrestling, the thing that he's known so much for, it really does level the playing field. And I think what was surprising to Covington was that Usman was able to withstand, and not only withstand his pressure, but kind of exceed it. Because in the 5th round, he looked like the more fresh guy, and he got the finish. It was a great fight, though.
Well, we got to think this is going to be a heavily bet main event, just given the magnitude of this entire show coming up at Madison Square Garden. And even though he can't be with us here in New York City, you can be sure on the ground in Las Vegas, Johnny Avello has some betting trends and information for you as to what's going on at DraftKings Sportsbook. Johnny.
Hello, John. It's great seeing you and the guys again. I went back and I looked at action on the first fight. That was UFC 245. That happened almost 2 years ago. We opened Usman minus 165 and closed at minus 190. The money on that fight balanced out quite nicely. But the odds-making story for this is a little different for this World Championship rematch. We opened Usman minus 240 with Covington plus 195, and we have been progressively pushed to Usman minus 320 with the take back of plus 250. It's just a steady flow of cash on the champ, who has taken 2/3 of all the money.
All right, so as they say, therein lies the rub. You heard it from Johnny Avello. A lot of action coming in on Kamaru Usman, at least early during fight week.
Well, you saw him improve, as I stated earlier. In the fight with Masvidal, the rematch, in the fight with Gilbert Burns, his former teammate, you saw how much better he's gotten. And one more thing about this fight. Kamaru Usman's going into another rematch for Colby Covington. So we've seen him in a rematch situation before, and he overperformed. That fight in Jacksonville with Masvidal could not have gone any better. We have not seen Colby Covington in a rematch. We don't know what type of adjustments he can make. We don't know if his team has prepared him in the way that we know Usman can prepare for a rematch. So I can understand it.
All right, so DC and I are going to be on the sticks, which means we don't have to make a prediction. Chuck, you do. Who wins
Hot
the main
seat
event?
over here.
Somebody going to be mad at you.
That's inevitable.
We've learned that, right, John?
That's right.
That is inevitable. You know what? I can't go against a guy like Usman at this point in his career. He does look better every time out. I just think he feels out the situation, too. You see him getting into a fight. He was able to do that with Colby. I think Colby showed a lot of mettle in that last fight. Just with that broken jaw and just keeping him. I would expect him to want to do that again. But you know as well as I do, in a rematch, when these things go down, it can take a mental toll.
Yeah,
I gotta go with Usman.
Especially with all the bad blood, right?
Yeah.
Bad blood. I think that Usman just had, right now it's just very tough to pick him. He's now in a historical context, what he's doing. So I think, and he guards against complacency. I don't really see the guy, coming in there and taking anything for granted.
Sure.
He wants the fight. I just like him in this fight.
And I know for some bettors like me, maybe $25 per bet, right? Minus 320 can be a prohibitive price. But I'll just tell you, Kamaru Usman, if you have bet on him in the UFC, you've cashed all 14 times. Hard to argue with those numbers. All right, co-main event a little bit closer on paper. Zhang Weili, the former strawweight champion, holding as a slight favorite right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, minus 120. The comeback on Rose Namajunas at even money. Over 4.5 rounds, juiced to minus 130. Under 4.5 can be had at even money. So, first fight, champ, lasted 1 minute and 18 seconds. What are your expectations?
But what did we learn?
Not a lot.
What did we learn in 1 minute and 18 seconds, right? We lost it, as we did when Rose won the title in New York City. John and I, Rogan, it's honestly been some of our best memes. Rose Namajunas championship performances. But in Zhang Weili, we didn't see what she can do in there with Rose Namajunas because she got knocked out so quickly. So I think we have to look at this one like a brand new fight. We didn't get, one of the things people talk about with Zhang Weili is how athletic she is, how gifted she is. We didn't get to see that. We didn't get to see her really have to dig deep like she did against Joanna in that fantastic fight that they had. And Rose Namajunas has also shown that. Very close fight, very tough fight to see who's got the advantages, but it's a brand new fight.
Yeah.
Zhang Weili didn't like the boos, right, that she heard. She complained of jet lag. She has been in Phoenix,
Florida.
Arizona. Right. Yeah. Everybody's always banging on the Floridians. But she has aligned with the renowned fight-ready team, Santino DeFranco and Eddie Cha. Henry Cejudo has been a stabilizing force. So we'll see if we get a different version.
We will see, but I know when that fight, the one thing we did see was that we saw Rose once again kind of just like swallow the bomb of the moment, block out all the hysteria, and she was so locked in that it was almost ridiculous. And then for her to just I know you were mentioning this on the actual broadcast, she was circling and make herself very elusive, and how quickly she was able to deliver that head kick. I think that's got to be her approach again. It's just kind of keep the fight, from a distance where she has turned into a veritable like a striker through this process. She loves fighting in New York. She gets better in these rematches every time she's had them. She's looking. I feel pretty confident for her going in this fight.
You know what's crazy, John, is like we speak to Weili and her athleticism. But as Chuck alluded to, Rose was bouncing and moving, and she actually it was the back step, right? Back step, front kick, which is a hard kick to land. That front lead leg is a very difficult one. You see a lot of head kicks from the backside. But Rose was able to go short step, long step, high kick, fight over. Tremendous performance by Rose Namajunas. And boy, John's grabbing Joe. I was like, wow. Like multiple times, Rose has really blown our socks off.
Within the theater when you guys do.
Well, because I think we're sort of expectant that we're going to hunker down for a 25-minute war, and then the fight ends in a minute, and there goes away
guys,
Zhang
all that
Weili's
material that you write out, and you could only get to like what?
That's right. Yeah, a lot of stuff ended up on the cutting room floor. But Zhang Weili had won 21 straight fights, and going into that previous meeting, you had to lay 2-1. That is not the case going into the rematch this weekend. Let us check back in with the capable mind of Johnny Avello as to what's going on in terms of the trends for Zhang Weili and Rose Namajunas at DraftKings Sportsbook.
The odds are certainly tight for the women's strawweight second go-around. Rose Namajunas opened a slight favorite at minus 120, and now it's Weili at minus 120, which puts her opponent at even money. The early volume of money and total wagers continues to come in on Weili, but we've also taken some real solid pops on Namajunas. For what I'm seeing so far on the betting front, this one appears to have the possibility to be our largest handle ever on a women's UFC event. One notable prop that's taken some significant action is Namajunas to win in the second round by KO, TKO, or DQ. The odds on that prop are 1,400. Plus 1,400, that is.
All right, Johnny, thank you very much. Some interesting numbers there. A lot of people like that round 2 Rose Namajunas knockout proposition. I will tell you, Rose Namajunas 3-0 in rematches in her career. Wins over Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and Tisha Torres as well. Daniel, what do you think about what Johnny had to say? It seems like we're going to get two-way action on this fight and a pretty damn heavy handle.
Absolutely, right? Because people do look at it as, why would you get such a great price on Weili when we didn't see the fight, right? And a lot of really smart people that bet fights say that. So it's a close fight, competitive, and you'll see people going in both directions.
I just know one thing. Rose Namajunas in New York City brings it.
Something in the
She
water,
brings
man.
it, and I could imagine, she's been able to do some pretty awesome things there. A second-round finish, that is not out of the question. I could see something like that happening.
All right, so is that your official prediction, Thug Rose Namajunas?
I do think she's going to win this fight.
Wow.
And
It's
Zhang Wei
tough,
Li, if you're
too.
watching, that's not like an American bias. He just thinks she's going to win the fight.
I do, and I picked against Rose many times, and I think I'm trying to learn my lesson. Is what this is. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. A featured bout in the UFC's lightweight division. This matchup, all the rage with fight fans, and rightfully so. Title eliminator of sorts in the UFC's lightweight division. Justin Gaethje back for the first time since fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov for the undisputed title. He is entrenched as a -210 favorite right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. The comeback on Michael Chandler, +175. Seems like the handle right now in terms of the number of bets, 83% of the bets that have come in are on Justin Gaethje, but the money is 50-50. That tells me, DC, that maybe the sharps and the sharks like the value on the Chandler side.
I think so, right? That's what you see a lot. The big bets come in on the people that see value. They don't bet the guy, they bet that number. When you look at Chandler as that underdog and you see what he did to Dan Hooker in his debut, you see the first round he had against the champion Charles Oliveira, you think to yourself, wow, if this guy can just put it together, he can beat anybody. But with Justin Gaethje, you have to remember, this is a former interim champion who, in some case, a lot of people thought he won round 1 against Khabib Nurmagomedov before he got submitted.
Right.
But this guy is as fun, he's as gifted, and he hits as hard as anybody in the lightweight division. This one here is going to blow the roof off the garden.
You know what number strikes me?
What's that?
It's the under of 1.5. You guys like to say, the commentators, when they say something like, hey, don't blink, or you say something like that, it's always the kiss of death, right? Then the fight goes. This one has that kind of feel to it, but at the same time, I'm throwing that out the window. I think that this does have potential to be a very quick fight for one guy or the other. First, they accommodate each other's styles. I also think that the name Islam Makhachev has kind of lit a fire under them.
Has to, right?
Yeah, I think that now produces a situation where one of these guys is going to want to show out and have an emphatic win here.
I think this is a title eliminator for Justin Gaethje more than Michael Chandler.
Right.
So I think the pressure's on Gaethje now to go out and do something spectacular. I don't think he has to rush and win the fight in 1:40 or however long it took Islam. I think that he needs to look good, and I think that he needs to go and find a finish. We've seen some very fun Justin Gaethje fights that last a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if the long fight will do what he needs it to do on this weekend. 16
of his victories have come inside of that 1.5 rounds, by the second round. And I think the last 5 Chandler fights have also been under. So it's a very intriguing bet at -110.
All right, so -110, under a round and a half for Chuck Mindenhall.
Yeah.
Under 7.5 minutes. You think we're getting a finish? Ultimately, who do you think wins?
I think we get a finish, and I think it's going to be Justin Gaethje.
All right. Islam Makhachev, of course, is lurking. He's won 9 consecutive fights, and unlike Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler, he's never competed for the UFC's undisputed title, so perhaps that gives Islam the inside track, but obviously we're going to wait on the result this weekend. All right, one more fight we want to get to on this here UFC 268 betting preview. Frankie Edgar is a man. He is 40 as of a few weeks ago. He's a +145 underdog, though, against Marlon Chito Vera out of Ecuador. Chito, the favorite here, at -165. 64% of the handle right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, and 80% of the overall money, or bets, I should say, are on Marlon Chito Vera. Second fight at Madison Square Garden for Frankie Edgar. I can't tell you whether or not the man's going to retire, win, or lose, DC, but a lot of pressure and a lot of eyeballs on Frankie Edgar this week.
It kind of feels like he was going to walk away from this thing. You know, I know I had heard somewhere that it was going to be a retirement fight, and if it is, this is ideal, right? He's in New York. He's right up the street from New Jersey, where he was born and raised. But Frankie Edgar is that guy that over the course of his career, John, we've sat on so many different networks talking about he's the little engine that could. He's the one that doesn't give up. He's going to have one of those vintage performances on Saturday because Marlon Vera is young. He's hungry, and he's had to really build himself up through the UFC. He's grown up in front of our eyes. I remember him on The Ultimate Fighter Latin America, season 1. Right? So this guy's like finding his groove, and he gets an opportunity to fight Frank. And obviously, we have not seen Frankie as the same guy down this last stretch of fights that he's had.
Par for the course that he should be an underdog, right? A perennial underdog through his career. I think this guy is always an underdog. But returning home to New York City, I know this was the second time, I think it was UFC 205 when he beat Jeremy Stevens. I know how much it means to him to want to get this, regardless if it's his last fight or not. I think you're going to see Frankie leave it all in there, win or lose. And it's hard to predict. He is 40 years old, but I think it's going to be a big night for him going in there. I think it's going to feel good for him to return home.
And he did have a big win over 5 rounds against Pedro Munoz not all that long ago, so I know we sort of have that Sandhagen result fresh in our minds. But Frankie has been competitive. But, man, Chito Vera, if you've got an all-violence team and he's not on it, I don't know what you're doing. Do you have a proposition bet or a prediction for this fight?
You know, if I was going to take this one, I'm probably going to go Chito Vera, only because he's a dozen years younger. I think that, you know, we saw what he was able to do in a couple of his last fights. And even in the Aldo fight, like, you know, he had his moments. I just think that he's the younger fighter, and he gets it done. He's going to spoil the homecoming. But I think I think we're going to see some plot twists in this. I think it'll go back and forth a little bit.
Aldo had to wrestle Chito Vera. Like Jose Aldo wrestled Chito Vera in the 3rd round in order to get a victory. That's how tough he is. But if there's a guy that's out there, a guy that will never give up on himself, think back to the Gray Maynard fights and so many other fights where Frankie Edgar has literally just bit down on the mouthpiece and gotten it done. That's another one of those ones that we are going to be so excited. I mean, this whole fight card
loaded, man.
is tremendous.
If he's not inducted into the Hall of Fame straight up as just who he is, his fights against Gray Maynard will be. I just feel like that those are 2 of the best fights. He's always he's that underdog who has some of the Gotti Ward thing going on in him. He's got so much going on.
East Coast guy, right?
Yeah, you can't count him out.
Right. Even Boston guys support New Jersey guys like that. And his future's in the UFC Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about
100%.
it. But, of course, his present, a huge opportunity against Chito Vera at the world's most famous arena this Saturday night. Well, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC, has a knockout offer for you for this weekend's event. DraftKings offering new customers $200 in free bets if you bet just $5 on either main event fighter to win, and it comes in. You pick either Kamaru Usman or Colby Covington, and if they win and you're a new customer, you're getting $200 in free bets. Do not miss out on all the action of UFC 268 with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code VEGAS when you sign up to receive $200 in free bets. If your bet of $5 on UFC 268 cashes, that is code VEGAS to receive $200 in free bets. If the main event fighter you choose wins, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, that is going to do it for our UFC 268 betting preview. For Johnny Avello, Chuck Mindenhall, and Daniel Cormier, John Anik saying so long from New York City. We can't wait to see all of you live on pay-per-view on Saturday night. We got a big one.